Good evening, Europe, and welcome to Green Screen. I'm your host, Sam Murray, and over the next few months, we're going to be bringing you a wide range of online film screenings and invite you to join our debates on the future of Europe, post-COVID recovery, and making our societies more resilient and sustainable. Tonight's theme is Children Deserve Equal Opportunities: How Education Can Make a Difference in Communities. As an educator myself, a university lecturer, I witness the first-hand power of education in allowing people to find out what they think about the world around them and to unleash their talents and potential. Nothing is more incredible than that moment you see a light bulb turn on in a student's head as they get a concept being discussed or form their own opinion. Moments like these are why I teach. I also have the immense privilege of working with many students who are the first in their family to go to university and see both the pride and the burden of such a position. They are the first because of the lack of equal opportunity, preventing their parents and grandparents from having a chance. And we have so much to address in the education system. Dialogues are happening about how to level this playing field, to ensure quality education for all, but also to address systemic inequalities, and in particular reflect on the histories we have in Europe around colonialism, around slavery, and around migration. Tonight's film, Children of Chance, is a beautiful exploration of how children through education learn about their social and cultural identities, as well as how to think and respond to a world around them. The inquisitiveness of the pupils is fostered by their teacher, Brigitte, who isn't afraid to tackle tough subjects such as the impacts of social media on mental health, terrorism, and religion. And she never tells the children what to think, but gives them the tools to make their own minds up and understand how they have the power to shape their own destiny. The film we're bringing you tonight is part of the Green Screen project, and it is now my great honour to present to you and introduce the Secretary General of the European Greens, Mar Garcia, who is going to tell us a little bit more about the Green Screen project, its aims and its motivations as well. So hello, Mar, how are you this evening?
Hello, I'm very well, thank you. And hello, everybody who is watching us from different corners of Europe.
So, Mar, can I ask you to tell us more about the Green Screen project and what's inspired you to proceed with the project and what your aim is with it as well?
Yes. So here today is our second screening. I just wanted to share also again, the Green Screening is a project, probably the nicest project that the EGB has been doing in this, let's say 5 years, I would say. It's a sweet project. And I mean, when the corona crisis, the coronavirus hit us, we were all like very shocked. And a lot of people were talking about the difficulties that the cultural sector was going through. So, of course, we reacted politically with all the answers that we thought that we had to put on the table, the green answers to the corona crisis and what's the way forward. But we also had a special look into the cultural sector. And we thought that screening films would be a nice way to support the cultural sector and to foster political debate around different topics. So that's the soul of the Green Screening, the ambition to also, step a little bit in this cultural world and, bring our small support on this, on the recovery of the cultural sector, but also to foster political debate around Europe and around important topics like the one that we are tackling today.
And of course, today's session is looking at education. I wonder, do you have any particular thoughts on either tonight's film or the topic or what we might have in store for people this evening?
I really thought that this film was particularly touching. The film falls under the umbrella of the social Europe that we're calling for. And of course, we're always talking about, a recovery that doesn't leave anyone behind. Well, education is a great tool not to leave anyone behind. It's probably one of the most structural and thus important tools that we have to move towards a greener transition, but more than anything, through a just transition. So I think that the topics or the many aspects that this film put on the table are going to probably more than surely bring a super nice debate where we're all going to learn many things. So I'm very much looking forward to it.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for joining us, Mar. And I'm sure you would like to wish everybody to come and check out the film that is currently on our website.
Yes, just one thing. Remember, third Thursday of every month, 2 days, EGP is bringing you to the cinema, 2 days of free screening, so you can watch the film for free. It's not a film that you will find easily, so it's a good opportunity to step into this. And then, if you want, of course, you're also super invited to join the debate. Third Thursday of every month, green screening.
I'm sure everybody at the moment is putting it in their phones and in their diaries. Thank you very much for joining us, Mar. And your comments in particular have set us up quite nicely for our next section, which is we're going to start our discussion today with our artistic pill, which focuses on the work of artist Pablo Ponce, a visual artist and art teacher in the Netherlands, who has worked with children in refugee camps to develop a shadow puppet theatre. So let's now take a look at the short video that he has prepared for us, and I hope you enjoy it.
Ik denk kunst is een manier om te leven. Is mijn manier om te communiceren en ook reflecteren op maatschappij. Meestal ik doe sociaal en politiek werk. Ik ben Pablo Ponce, ik ben beeldende kunstenaar en kunstdocent. Ik doe mijn eigen kunstwerken, verschillende kunstprojecten, soms samenwerking met andere kunstenaars. De laatste 3 jaar ben ik bezig als kunstdocent, samenwerking met een stichting Vrolijkheid. En ik werk in de vluchtelingenkamp met kinderen. En ik ben bezig met een poppentheater bouwen en omwerk samen met de kinderen. Het is echt belangrijk voor de kinderen als ze kunnen met kunstenaar werken en ze kunnen zien een andere manier om te spelen met de creativiteit, stimuleren de creativiteit en ook hoe ze kunnen zien de toekomst en hoe kunnen dromen. Hi lieve kinderen van Vrolijkheid, ik ben meester Pablo. Ik heb voor jullie deze mooie schaduwtheater gemaakt. Ik hoop dat jullie kan ook thuis doen.
Het is het wel en de politieagent en de kapitein zitten op een boot te varen naar een droomland.
Ik zie het daar, daar.
Oh ja!
Dit is een eiland, echt mooi land. Ik denk dat de kinderen zich hebben andere energie, andere vitaliteit dan de volwassenen. En ze hebben een echt vrolijke manier om te leven. En ze zijn altijd denken aan levende momenten. Eerst, ze begrijpen niet wat is een toneel, wat is een theater, wat is een poppentheater. Maar nu, na een jaar samenwerking, ze begrijpen en ze zijn echt enthousiast en ze zijn echt trots op hunzelf dat ze hebben dit gemaakt. En dit was de een van deze korte mooie verhalen.
So I very much think Pablo's work there really shows us the importance of education to help children understand the world around them and the experiences they've been through using art and creativity to allow for that expression where words cannot reach. And it is this theme of education being a tool of understanding and comprehension which frames our debate today as we explore the importance of education as well as ensuring equal opportunity through it. And I'm delighted to be joined by a wonderfully rich panel of speakers that we have for today's discussion. So I'm delighted to have joining me Sebastian Root, City Councillor for GroenLinks in Utrecht and spokesperson for Education, Sports and Buildings. Thank you for giving us a wave, Sebastian.
Good evening, Europe.
Next, we have Elias Verhaal, who is a secondary school teacher in Mertem, near Brussels in Belgium. If you could just give us a wave, please, Elias, that would be great.
Hello.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Dr. Marika Darmody, who is a research officer for the Economic and Social Research Institute, as well as an adjunct assistant professor at Trinity College Dublin. Welcome, Marika.
Hello.
And we also have with us Dalibor Levacek, who is an English teacher and head of languages department at Academia Grammar School. Good evening to you, Dalibor.
Hello, and thanks for the invite.
You are very most welcome. Also having joining us very shortly will be Anya Presnuina, who is a student of theology and religious studies in Helsinki and a vice council member of Kirkkonummi Town Council on the local education and culture committee. So Anya will be joining us very shortly. But before we begin the discussion tonight, why don't we have a look at the trailer of the film Children of Chance, which you can still see. Wonderful. You might want to, after this particular session, grab some popcorn, sit down and wine for the day and watch this film. And you can access it through our website, www.thegreenscreen.eu. So let's now take a look at the trailer for the film.
Les vacances se sont bien passées? Tant mieux. C'est bon, c'est bon. Comme quoi, ce que j'ai fait l'année dernière, on a quand même un peu retenu. Tout le monde en religion islamique? Ah non. Lucas en morale? Que tu faisais dans la mine? Si votre grand-père n'avait pas décidé un jour de quitter son pays pour venir travailler à Chorat, vous seriez en Turquie sur un banc à l'école en Turquie au lieu d'être ici avec moi.
Qu'est-ce qu'il y a un grand-père qui était mineur ici à Chorat?
Il avait dit que c'était dur et le sol, c'est pas très agréable. Le prix surtout quand des pierres allaient tomber sur eux ou quoi.
Il faut que vos enfants soient en pleine forme. Parce que la grosse échéance, évidemment, c'est au mois de juin, le CEB pour les élèves de 6e. Tout le monde doit l'avoir.
C'est le chaos à l'intérieur de l'aéroport. La façade en verre a été complètement soufflée. Dans les décombres, certains cherchent encore des proches.
En fait, je sais pas pourquoi ils tuent. Ils ont pas la même religion.
Non, la plupart ici.
Oui.
Mais c'est la même religion, ils sont musulmans.
Oui. Mais pas de la même façon, madame.
Là, tu fais le malin parce que tu es chez les grands. Oui. L'année prochaine, tu sais bien ce que je t'ai dit, tu seras chez les petits.
Ce qui me rend le plus heureux, quand on est tous rassemblés, quand on est en famille. Le monde, la vie, c'est comme ça, monsieur.
On va aller chercher les phares de contrôle. Ah, mais je ne l'ai même pas photocopié.
So that was the trailer for our film Children of Chance. You can still access it, and after today's discussion you might like to have a watch. And I think what this film really encapsulates is how education is a powerful tool. And in fact, on social media this week, we've asked everybody, do you think education is a powerful tool that can change people and communities? And I'm delighted to say that we had a 100% positive response of people saying yes. And some people also often thought about education benefiting everybody in society, not just children, and how education can be a tool to help people change. So we're now going to start off our panel discussion by thinking about that particular theme of how education can have the power to change people's lives and communities. And Marika, if I could come to you first, and I'd like to ask you, what do you think that the film says about the role of education in the lives of children today and their communities? And also, I wonder if you could help us set the scene a little bit and perhaps reflect on some of the recent research that the ESRI has done around the impact of COVID on education.
Thank you. Can I just first start by asking that I totally agree with what Mar was saying earlier. It is such a touching film, and it raises so many pertinent topics about the role of education and the role of schools in the academic and social integration of young people, but not just children, but as you could see from the film, also the parents. So school is such an essential place for coming together and discussing differences in a safe environment. And what we could also see was the humanity of that teacher and the sensitivity with which he was tackling so many quite difficult issues. And also international research says that teachers' role is so important in the school engagement of young people. And we could also see from our own research in the SRI that has emerged that if students have positive and trusting relationship with the teacher, their outcomes are a lot better compared to the students who, get a lot of criticism, are being given out to a lot, who then subsequently may disengage. And then getting them engaged again would be rather difficult. And also that feeds into another field of research that indicates the importance of a significant adult in a child's life, an adult that the child can trust and talk to. And you could see the link between the children and the teacher in the film very explicitly. There was such trust and from one side, and such support from the other. And also, what is quite important to note here is that not once did the teacher engage from a deficit perspective when she was talking to the children and with their parents. It was always done very, very sensitively. And again, it's brings me to yet another field of research that we have been engaged in, which is the whole field of parental engagement and teachers' perspective sometimes, and sometimes they can be rather racialized and perhaps not correct in seeing a parental interest in the child's education or the extent to which they engage with the child's education. We just need to understand other people a little bit better. And for that to happen, we need a trusting environment and frank discussion. In terms of the COVID situation, my colleagues and I put together a report at the end of last year, trying to bring together different studies that were carried out. Many of them were rapid research, etc., because the situation was changing so quickly, and we had no handle on what was going on. What did people find, etc. And that was actually quite eye-opening in terms of the issues that emerged, and again the importance of education. Because often we kind of see schools also just as a site of academic endeavor, but it is so much more than that. It is a space where people meet up with their friends, where they get support from the teachers, where they actually have a nice and quiet place where to engage with the schoolwork, all the homework clubs and all that. But we have to consider that, COVID hit us all differently. In some households, perhaps we have all the resources available, but not in others. Also, what we found was that although there was plenty of research emerging in terms of the impact of COVID on the education of children from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, there's very little at that stage available that actually focused specifically on migrants and migrant children. And this is really an area that we need to understand a lot more. Because if we know that there has been a delay in achievement, amongst other students, then, it would be safe to assume that at least for some migrant parents, the learning loss has been greater. And unfortunately, yet there hasn't been that much specifically migrant-focused research being carried out. But then if we want to actually make policy recommendations, we also need empirical evidence. So we need to get those studies done. I don't know if that's kind of answers your questions.
It definitely does. I really love the way that you've connected these very emotive themes about the need for trust in that relationship in education with parents and with teachers, but also recognizing that there are some inequalities that do exist within the system, and that if we had more research, we would be able to look into these and understand why they need to happen. So I think it's a very crucial perspective to add. And I wonder if I could now put a similar question to Sebastian. First of all, I must say congratulations to Sebastian, who has very recently been appointed to Utrecht City Council and is quite new to the job. But Sebastian, I wonder if you had any thoughts about either some of the themes and topics that Marika was talking about, or also any responses that you had from your position about the film, and perhaps reflecting on what role do you feel that education has played in Utrecht and other localities like it that you've experienced in the Netherlands?
Yeah, thank you for having me again. And indeed, it's my very first week in office, so it's a bit fresh, everything, but I've had excellent preparation by my colleagues, and also I've been active for quite a while. So basically, what I found really interesting looking at the movie is that, first of all, I have the greatest respect for the teacher. Not only this teacher, but I think there's so many teachers that are basically working their ass off to make everything and to give every student the attention that they need. And wow, nothing but the greatest respect. I think what you also saw in the movie that I found quite interesting is that you saw the learning function, that the children are learning something. You saw the social function of education, how bullying was addressed, how well-being of the students was addressed, and also the societal position of the students and the citizenship education may be that they are being taught how to take their place in society and taught to dream and to go get and being challenged for whatever they want to be. What I found quite interesting, touching on the topics that Dr. Darmody addressed, is I think it's not only an equal attention in science, but one thing that we find interesting is that sometimes equal attention and equal opportunities does not enable equality at the end. And I think I'm not that fluent in the English today, but I think this is the whole discussion about equality versus equity. But I think in Utrecht, to create equal outcomes, we try to invest inequally where the resources are more needed to foster a more equal result and make sure that no one is getting left behind. I think this is the aim that we're doing. There's still a lot of work with a lack of, we're still searching for more and more teachers because we need all of them. And the lack of teachers is sometimes resulting in bigger classes, which is not helping the development of children. But in that sense, we want to focus our resources most where they are most needed. And I think this is how we in Utrecht City Council try to make sure that we create as not only equal, but as fair chances as possible.
And I think it's really important that we do highlight the perspective of teachers. And in fact, we did a bit of social media research ourselves to try and find out what people thought about teachers, and particularly asking if people had a favourite teacher at school. And on our social media results, we had 23 yeses, and I think 13 of them said that they had more than one teacher who inspired them in school. And when we asked them how did they inspire, there was a lot of discussion such as, teaching them new skills to really build up people's self-confidence and self-belief, but also to inspire them to kind of push themselves and to be and to reach and fulfill their potential. And I think now will be a really great opportunity for us to bring in some of the teachers on our panel. And I'm going to ask Elias to speak first, and then Dalibor, if you just want to kind of hop in after Elias speaks. And I want to ask you, what do you feel the role is that teachers play in shaping a child's education? And then also perhaps in responding to some of the themes that Sebastian raised about resources, and particularly, for example, in Utrecht, there is, a lack of teachers at the moment. What support do teachers need in doing their work and to make this kind of career tenable? So Elias, if we want to come to you first.
Yeah, so first and foremost, the role of the teacher is manifold. There are many aspects that you are when you're a teacher. One I experience most is being a motivator, and that's also very relatable with the example from the movie. Whether it is in positive reinforcement, never naming deficits, as has already been pointed out here, but when there is aggravation, she does show it, which is common, but she never points really towards the negative, but it's just in the tone and the expression, and the children or the students will adapt to that because they want to have good connections with the people who do something for them. There is much more gratefulness amongst those who are being taught by children once you start to appeal to that. In my experience, which up to here is short, because indeed we have a teacher shortage, also here in Belgium. So my rolling into education was a rather unlikely event. I actually studied English and ancient Greek. And then one day I got a call to go teach Latin, followed by history, followed by religion. So I've never taught the courses I actually learned because we're just filling in spots and places for teachers in first and second grade. From there, one anecdote I could place there is about the grammar. So in the movie, you have this scene where she explains the pronouns and these basic grammar rules about the object. And I was actually surprised to see it in sixth year, so in the last year of basic education, because for the Dutch speaking, so for the Flemish part of Belgium, that is no longer obliged. I don't know how it is in Walloon, but here it's no longer obliged, which has the conclusion that when you're teaching Latin to a first year, you're basically to teach the cases and to teach about object and functions in the sentences. You're first doing that before the teacher of Dutch, who is supposed to teach the grammar of Dutch, which leads to a lot of confusing situations there. So that's kind of a local problem. But it stood out for me because if you already see how they respond to that, it's also one of the scenes where the aggravation of the teacher shows most because of how difficult the matter in itself is, how you're taking those children to take a step towards abstract thinking. You really need to motivate them for that. And you need to set a good role, a good role model, a good example there. So I'd wish she'd do it with a little bit more enthusiasm. So motivating is one big part. That goes in grammar, it goes in social skills, of course, too. As far as social skills go too, being a role model, being an example, you're someone who they will look up to is another great part besides being a motivator. You're being a role model. And speaking for myself, if I remember my teachers from secondary school, I had both Latin and Greek, and I remember those teachers the best because of their personality. I could not describe their faces. I don't remember half of their names, but I can remember the way they taught. I remember their style, their way of talking, their way of storytelling, their way of building up towards a certain goal. That has always stayed clear in my mind, which also played a part why I accepted teaching Latin instead of ancient Greek when the chance was given, even though technically I'm not even 100% qualified. But the shortage here is so that that I'm filling in with whatever skills I have. So you also have to be flexible as a teacher. Yeah, that's probably number 3. That's not so much towards the children themselves, although also, but most of all towards your colleagues, towards the school system. And if, Sebastian, the government, whether it be in the Netherlands or I'm talking from Belgium, of course, but neighboring countries, if there's one thing that the government can do, it is playing into the flexibility of starting teachers. Also, I'm technically not 100% qualified, but according to the school, I'm doing a good job. They've hired me for 2 years in a row now. So what can we do to make that more flexible? How do you build up insurance of work, insurance of continuity? Diplomas, what kind of diploma qualifies? There have been a lot of simplifications towards that. But for me, I still now have to try to return to the university to get the master's degree and the specific qualifications to be sure that I have rights to teach this course again. So that's one point I can give away from there.
Thank you very much. I think that's a whole different broad range of very important topics about the role of the teacher, and particularly this idea of the teacher being the role model. I think really goes back to what America was saying about that trust and that strength of that relationship and bond that needs to be there, but also to be able to show, the examples of how to go through particular situations in life. So I thought that was a really great comment. And Dalibor, would you like to offer some thoughts that you would have on what role do you feel that the teacher plays in shaping a child's education?
Yeah, hi, thanks. So for starters, I absolutely agree with my colleague that a teacher is first of all motivated. That's what we do. And the education has really changed in the last maybe 10 years, because for hundreds of years it was all about like passing on the knowledge. But it's not so anymore. Students can find the knowledge anytime they want to. They can Google stuff faster than I talk. They can correct my mistakes. So it's no longer about like imparting the knowledge on them. Maybe the role of the teacher today would be more of a guide through their lives, and be a kind of a respectful guide as to opening their possibilities, their potential. And that's what Brigitte does in the documentary, and she does it beautifully, because since we are talking about equal opportunities, the teacher is very often the very first person who notices the discrepancies between the students. And a good teacher knows the background of the students, and it is his or her job to find out that somehow the teacher is not fulfilling their full potential. So I believe the role of like a respectful guide is much more important than the role of a teacher just as a person who tells you what stuff is, because they can Google it in like 5 seconds. And as to your second question, as to what is needed, I believe in our country, it's and maybe in more countries, it's more about teacher training, because these changes in the role of the teacher are so fast that they are not always reflected in the curricula of teacher training institutions. So maybe of just teaching us the subjects and teaching us the hard facts, what we need more as teachers is to be taught the soft skills, the people skills, connecting with students and respectfully, finding out their needs and trying to motivate them. And again, that's what Brigitte does beautifully for me in the documentary.
Thank you very much. Yes, I mean, from my own perspective as an educator, yes, definitely the soft skills is very, very crucial to thinking about how to engage students on a whole variety of fast-moving topics and challenges that they face. And of course, one of the worrying things is to see the speed at how young people are consuming social media. And we even see in the film a discussion about how the online space is becoming more difficult to not only police as society, but for children to navigate, whether they experience online bullying or accessing content that they really shouldn't be exposed to at their age. And, depending on, from my own experience in the UK, the teaching system doesn't really cover that. And I'm sure it might be in similar cases that you don't receive the training around these subjects. And it would be really interesting to see how governments would respond to that. Before I come to Anya, actually, I just want to show a clip that really connects to this discussion that we're having, which is really about how the classroom can be a place to have those really difficult conversations and to really also demonstrate the skills that Brigitte has as the teacher in that space of being able to navigate really quite difficult topics and what the teacher's role is in that understanding. So I'm just going to ask our wonderful technical team if they can now share with you this particular clip, and then I'm going to come to Anya afterwards to offer some particular thoughts, and I've got a specific question waiting for you on the other side, Anya. So let's now enjoy the clip.
Oui, mais pas tous en même temps, hein, parce que sinon je peux pas. Non.
L'État islamique en Syrie, Daesh perd du terrain, mais les attaques à l'étranger se multiplient.
Alors, qu'est-ce qu'il y a comme différence entre notre pays démocratique et leur pays qui n'est pas démocratique?
Ils ne peuvent pas aller à l'école.
Ah, toi, si tu veux aller à l'école, tu as le droit d'aller à l'école ici.
Oui.
Là-bas, ce ne serait pas le cas. Si tu étais là-bas, à ton avis, tu serais habillée comment aujourd'hui?
En foulard.
En foulard? Toute fermée?
Oui. Moi, mais pas le visage.
On voit ton visage quand même. Toi, Sila, tu seras fermée plus tard. Tu vas
moi.
porter le foulard. Quand vas-tu le porter?
Je sais pas.
Quand tu seras mariée, tu vas porter le foulard?
Oui.
Et avant?
Et si ton mec il veut pas?
Ah, ça on ne sait pas justement. Si ton mari ne veut pas,
Ben, je suis obligée, madame.
tu seras obligée.
Oui.
Et si ton mari te dit non,
Ben, je ne fais pas. Divorce.
je ne veux pas, tu te maries avec lui?
Non.
Non, tu ne veux pas un mari qui ne voudra pas de ton foulard. Tu veux un mari qui acceptera le foulard.
Oui.
Toi, qu'est-ce que tu feras, Lila, quand tu seras plus grande? Qu'est-ce que tu veux faire? Tu veux le porter, pas le porter? Qu'est-ce que tu veux faire déjà dans ta vie? Qu'est-ce que tu veux faire en général?
Ben, je veux le porter.
Tu veux le porter?
Oui.
Explique-moi alors. Pourquoi?
Parce que c'est dans ma religion et quand je vois les gens qui le mettent de différentes façons, ben, ça m'intéresse et j'ai envie. Ma maman, elle voudrait bien que je le porte, moi aussi, mais elle me laisse le choix.
Et tu as des grandes sœurs.
Oui.
Elles le portent ou pas?
Non.
Elle a quel âge maintenant?
18.
Donc à 18 ans, elle ne le porte pas?
Non.
Non. Et qu'est-ce qu'elle attend pour le porter?
Peut-être que quand elle va se marier, ben, son mari voudra qu'elle le porte, mais voilà.
Mais si c'est son mari qui veut qu'elle le porte, ce n'est plus sa décision à elle. Elle n'a plus le choix. Si c'est parce que son mari le lui impose, est-ce que c'est encore un choix?
Non, mais voilà.
Et là, on parle du foulard, mais est-ce qu'on va lui imposer aussi un mari?
Non.
Elle va le choisir?
Oui.
Elle a déjà choisi?
Non.
Non?
Non. Elle a un petit copain?
Elle a un petit copain?
Non. Mon Dieu.
Ouais, mais tais-toi parce que je voudrais bien savoir les secrets.
Madame, par exemple, quand elle se dispute avec ma maman et qu'elle prend son GSM directement, elle a le sourire dans sa figure.
Ah, d'accord, donc il y a des signes.
Avec qui, elle met? Oui. Ouais.
Ah, ouais. On en apprend des choses aujourd'hui. Et Baran, tu as quelque chose à dire, toi? Tu ne dis rien? Toi, Baran, est-ce que tu veux que ta femme soit voilée plus tard? C'est vrai, toi, tu es un garçon, donc tu peux nous donner ton avis de garçon, de futur mari. Quand tu seras marié, est-ce que tu veux une femme qui portera le foulard?
Je sais pas, c'est son choix.
Tu lui laisses le choix?
Oui.
Toi, tu la vois comment? Avec ou sans?
Je sais pas. Avec, c'est notre religion, mais ça, quand c'est ça, elle est plus belle.
So what's really gorgeous about that clip is the fact that the children really have a chance to be able to find their own opinions and answers, and the skill that Brigitte has is really to allow them to find their own opinions on this particular topic and be able to articulate why they hold that particular point of view. Anya, I'm going to come to you now as our speaker on the panel representing the student perspective, if you like. And I wondered if I could ask you to reflect on how the classroom is a place to help people understand the world as it's changed around the pupils. And also ask you, how important do you think education has been in helping explain things such as the pandemic or the climate crisis or other major issues we have in our time?
Thank you. Thank you for these beautiful questions. And maybe the first thought that I had about this specific moment in the able to not guilty about their own culture and their own religion. And I felt like sixth graders in that film were so self-aware, and also they had and they still have to be super self-aware in a really, really young age, being migrants and being kind of people of third or second culture in Belgium, and also that applies to other countries. But also maybe referring to my own high school time, and also my own kind of experience as a student during really, really changing times. You know, I was born in 2001, which means that we started school in a really kind of old school way, and then when I graduated, we had all the exams held online, and also the digitalization was really, really much present in the time. And I feel like the school as it is changing, at least in Finland, where I live now, the role of school is really, really important in kind of showing the students that there is a safe space, and also that even though when the world is ending or the world is changing, you can come to school and not be attacked by different questions, and not be attacked as by the teachers. So maybe one of the things that mainly came into my mind when I was watching the film was that Brigitte was really able to create that kind of safe space where all the students were able to find their own views on things. And as you can see in that specific moment, all the students weren't agreeing with them, like with each other. So maybe creating a safe space for learning and creating a safe space for building up your own opinion is maybe the biggest kind of challenge and goal.
I think that's such an important point as well, to be able through education to provide space to think and have opinions without them, going under interrogation. And particularly in the age of social media, where constantly, if you express an opinion, you're constantly, attacked or shot down. Having the space to be able to, as you say, be self-aware and formulate your own opinions becomes really, really important. And I think that's a really nice reflection to show just how safe and important the space in which we do education in needs to be to get the most out of it. So thank you very much for those thoughts, Anya. We're now going to move on to the next section of the debate, which is we're going to focus on a discussion around ambition of education and how we support children and young people to unlock their potential. So we're going to start this particular section with a short clip that our magical team behind the scenes are currently queuing up. And this is a point in the film where a parent comes to the teacher quite exasperated by their child's behaviour at home, for the teacher to tell them that actually the child is quite different at school. So now let's just take a look at this short clip.
Je ne sais pas comment elle se comporte en classe, mais à la maison, pour moi, c'est toujours la même Guizam. C'est la Guizam qui est paresseuse. On doit être toujours derrière elle, on doit la pousser. Si on n'est pas derrière elle, elle coule. Hein. C'est la preuve.
Oui.
C'est la preuve de son bulletin.
Elle veut réussir, elle fait ce qu'il faut. Pour moi, elle est dans la bonne voie. Elle a beaucoup changé, moi, je trouve.
Oui, elle a changé. Elle devient de plus en plus chameau. Son caractère.
Oui.
Ah oui.
Je pense qu'elle est dans le bon. Elle veut vraiment réussir et elle progresse. Tout doucement, mais elle progresse. En français, c'est bon.
Oui, heureusement.
Et elle prend beaucoup d'assurance, je trouve. Et ça, c'est bien. Et c'est une meneuse, mais dans le bon sens, quoi.
Ah ouais.
Elle est positive. Ah, non, elle amène beaucoup de choses positives en classe. C'est.
Ah ouais.
Maintenant, elle a vraiment gagné beaucoup en maturité. Ouais. Elle est vraiment gentille.
Mais je pense que j'ai quand même donné une bonne éducation à mes enfants encore.
Je vous le confirme.
Oui.
Ben oui.
Pour tous les trois.
Ben oui. Si tous les gens avaient des enfants comme les vôtres, ce serait bien.
So I think that's a really gorgeous moment at the end of that clip where the parent is, really trying to seek a bit of affirmation that they're doing a good job, and the teacher's like, yeah, if everybody had kids like yours, that'd be amazing. And I think that it really allows that confidence to appear in parents, because sometimes parents might not understand when they've been doing a good job, and sometimes it's always important to raise that. And this kind of sits quite nicely on the first question I'm going to ask. And Anya, I'm going to ask you to contribute first. Also, just to say, if I could ask everyone for short answers, if possible, to this one, just because we're keeping an eye on time. But Anya, if I could come to you first and ask, do you feel that there is a pressure on children and young people to succeed and go further in life than their parents did?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And maybe I would like to answer to this question more from also a person who comes from different countries. So I moved to Finland with my parents when I was 9, which means that I call myself a third culture kid. And actually, what was also very, very important in that movie that we just saw, the children of immigrants are really pushed by themselves and also by the environment to go even further than their parents. It doesn't matter if the parents were. I wouldn't say that it really matters that from what kind of background their parents come from. It just really matters that they want to be even more, like they want to go even further, regardless of maybe like if their parents were professors. It doesn't matter, they want to go even further because it's kind of it's really a complex question which also requires a look on racism and classism and elitism, and where we're looking at especially when we're looking at the families who are coming to environments that seem to be more racist towards them. Of course, it requires you a lot of more efforts to kind of get on the same level as the kids who were born and raised in the same country as they're living in the moment. So yeah, I would say that especially kids of migrants are experiencing more pressure to go further from everyone and also from themselves.
Yes, I think that's such an important point. And actually, I'm just going to slightly throw the pre-agreed speaking order slightly to change it, because Marika has done particular research into the experience of migrant children in the education system. And I wonder, Marika, if you would be able to perhaps comment on what Anya's just shared from her own personal experiences, and if that stacks up with some of the research that you've done about the experiences of migrant children. Just to check, I think you might be muted.
Oh, pardon?
Yes, we can hear you now. That's okay.
Mm-hmm. I just wanted to say that internationally there is a huge literature on immigrants' aspiration and expectations, and also the paradox that occurs there as well. In terms of the ESRI research, we looked at parental expectations of 9-year-old migrant origin children, and the respondents were their mothers. And again, across broad country categories, we found that there was huge drive from their migrant parents to see their children doing really well educationally. And that tallies very well with the rest of the literature available that indicates that particularly the first generation migrants coming to the host country, obviously there are migration related penalties, etc., for various reasons that I won't go into at the moment because of the time limit, from the parents, and then that translates also into their expectations that the children would achieve a lot, and I suppose the children often then internalize those expectations and really try and aim very high. But we have to be mindful that there are various hurdles that they need to jump over in order to kind of sometimes catch up with the people who were born in the country. So there are lots of issues around it, but I definitely agree that the aspirations and the expectations for many migrant origin young parents and young children are high.
Yes, I think it's really crucial research that you've done that can help speak to that experience, and I could see Anya was nodding along to quite a lot of it, and I'm sure that you could relate to that as well. I'm now just going to bring in one of our teachers, Dalibor, and I wonder if you could also perhaps respond to some of the topics that Marika and Anya have raised, but also from your perspective as a teacher, do you see kind of pressure put on pupils and parents, or do you also see kind of pressures from the ambitions that they may have and want to achieve in life?
Oh, well, I agree with Anya and Marika. We do. Definitely, when we talk to the parents, we see the pressure. But the question is, how do we actually measure success? Because very often, when you talk about success, we talk about the money, about the career the child is going to get, and about the salary that goes with the career. But since we've established that maybe the role of the teacher is different, it is to be a guide to help to unlock the kids, unlock their potential. Maybe we are just using the wrong metrics to measure success. Maybe it's not about the best career in terms of money, but about the best career in terms of fulfillment of the kid. Yeah. So maybe the role of the teacher is to try and open as many doors for the kid, show them what's behind the doors, but not push them in any of those, and let the child choose, and explain to the kid that the best career is not the career that brings the most money, but maybe the career that makes them happiest, and maybe also contributes more to society than just to themselves. So this might be tricky because it goes against the expectation of the parents, but still I believe it's an important role of the teacher. Someone has to tell the kids it's not about the money, although their parents might disagree.
And I think it's a really interesting one where you come to, I'm a teacher in music, which is a creative subject, and we quite often have these interesting conflicts with the aspirations of a student with their parents' aspirations, who, obviously want them to go into more what are perceived to be more stable roles, doctors, lawyers, etc., whereas creative careers can be quite volatile but can actually suit people more. So I think that's a really, really interesting point to raise, and certainly one that I've seen. Sebastian, I'm going to turn to you next as one of our politicians on the panel. And I want to ask you about education policy. And from, either your experiences in Utrecht or the experiences from GroenLinks, or indeed your own experiences as a student that you've had, do you feel that education policy is matching the ambitions that children have? And what does good, ambitious education policy look like to you?
Well, that's a really broad question, but I think in general, ambitious education policy is policy where, linking to one of the previous teachers, where the teacher is the motivator, but the students is being challenged in their curiosity to achieve their greatest self. From a policy perspective, a few things were mentioned that I found really interesting. When Marika was talking about the hurdles that, for example, children with a migrant background have to take. One of the things on local level that we try to do is foster primary education locations where children already can go from an earlier age, and just to play, just to get in touch with other children, and also to get already a bit accustomed to the language, because we also think that helps in a primary education and later development, so that they have a more equal start from the beginning of primary education. One thing that Anya also addressed is the pressure that's on you from your parents' perspective. We see now that a lot of people from privileged backgrounds are offering their children additional education. So after your education, you're also following extra supports to get better results for your classes. It's a bit of an interesting topic because on the one hand, do you want to kind of push all children into additional education, or do you let them go free and play around after school because they also deserve the free time? But at the same time, if you only allow that for people from privileged backgrounds, then you're allowing the privilege to continue. So we basically our line is that we at least want to offer all students additional education on top of their normal education, so that if they want to, they could develop. So it's not a matter of privilege, but it's what the children want themselves. And what I found interesting, I think it was Dalibor, helping the children to find their own way, their own ambition, the places where they want to grow to. One of the things that the Dutch education system is really early on, and I think it's not helping children to reach their fullest potential, is that at the level of 12, their level of education is already kind of set. So in Utrecht, but also greater the Greens on national level, exploring the option of postponing that moment. And locally here in Utrecht, we have more, we call it broad bridging classes, to make sure that that age of choosing your level of education on top of your direction to say 14, 15 years old. So you have more time to actually find your direction and what you want to do before being set on a certain level, and that's kind of the level that you're fixed in. So I think these are local policy responses that we try to do to create a more fairer approach to education and to support children to achieve their highest potential. But a lot of work is still needing to be done.
That's really interesting to hear about how the system in the Netherlands is kind of created those almost restrictions, and there's some countries in Europe that are pursuing what in education circles is known as the STEM agenda, so science, technology, engineering and mathematics, and that is often to the detriment of being able to pursue those other kinds of careers that they want to as well. So for our final question, we've also had a question that's come in that's actually quite linked to it. So Elias, you were getting one of our questions that is from our viewers, and I think our magical team are going to be able to put this question up on the screen in a second. But we've had a question that's come in from Dagan Smith, who is asking, what about inclusivity in multicultural classrooms and how to foster that? But I think this connects quite nicely to the question I was going to ask you, which was about offering your thoughts, and if there is a lack of Europeanness, if you like, in education, of sharing cultures, sharing history, and learning about each other and the histories of those parts of the continent. So I wondered what thoughts you would have in response to Dagan's question and my own.
Yeah, so is there a lack of Europeanness in education? In my feeling, in my experience, I would say yes. I do lack not its presence, but because there is presence of Europeanness, especially in courses on history. Especially when you're dealing with classical history and you're moving from Greece and from the more eastern part of Europe towards the west. But then once you're in the medieval period in Belgium, you're basically starting the history of Western Europe, and looking towards even beyond Germany is only a matter until World War II in your last grade, in your last classes. So there's the entire world of Central Europe, Eastern Europe, the history of Greece that is on the margins, on the edges. If you're lucky, you have a teacher who's specialized in it and can tell you more, but it's not really touched upon. So migrants from other parts of Europe, or those who are here through the Schengen zone, might often find that they're bringing a part of cultural history or even political and economic history that is unknown to the teachers themselves. So in this sense, there is still a bubble when Europeanness enters history. And then we're lucky with history. There you can talk about European history, Europeanness. There it plays a role. But outside of it, courses about social skills, where you're developing the soft skills of the students, I often find a lack of interest for European identity or part of identity, or part of attitude towards neighboring countries even. So that then raises the question of the multicultural classroom and inclusivity. How do you make children starting from within Europe, from other cultural backgrounds that are, for example, not included within history, that are often then also ignored on cultural habits that might be slightly different? How do you include them? It's a very good question. And then outside of it, once you look more globally, the same goes. In my experience, we take steps during the start of the year to get some information from the children themselves, kind of survey-esque, but also like dialogues. This year, I've had a few interesting conversations already with a few children on Aramaic. So a few of them speak Aramaic, which to one of those classes I'm teaching religion, and by means of did Jesus once speak Aramaic, possibly yes or no, that topic was raised. So in that way, you can find entry points if you have background knowledge yourself. So in this case, the broad view of the teacher itself already plays an important role in making a multicultural room feel inclusive, as in they feel more recognized. They feel less estranged if you can give them the sense that you've just heard about it somewhere, or you just have an inkling about it. You don't have to know more about their background than they themselves, obviously, but if you give them the sense of you're not unknown, they will open up more confidently, in my experience. So that is definitely one, one, educate yourself, know about, try always to broaden your scope. That is one thing good to do as a teacher, to make that more plausible and possible. But on the other hand, give them the feeling of acknowledgement, like you're not another unknown world. For one, you're also a human being like me. So humanity and humanism, also an important strand within European thought since the 15th century, plays an important role there. So that for inclusivity. As far as Europeanness goes, another 2 cents by matter of speaking. I've studied ancient Greek. I've also had Latin. I would speak of Latin literary history, Greek literary history, and in this case, keep from classist attitudes. Although speaking about those traditions, still teaching them, still having students invest in them, posing the questions on the notion of classics. Is it classist? What does class has to do with classics? Is still important because it allows you to debate colonialism. It allows you to reframe certain questions. One concrete from my own experience, I discussed the 8th book of the Aeneid with one of my 6th grade classes. And there we reframed a discussion of a victory march of the emperor to one which is a story of domination, more or less, to a question of honor. And by that, like, why is such a form of imperialism dishonorable in a sense? Like, it tries to aggrandize itself, but then it tries to do that through a sense of honor, but that sense of honor deconstructs itself because the method towards is dishonorable. So there's a lot that you can do with like some aspects of the classics that are very pertinent to how you can open up such debates rather than making it a straightforward or preconceived tradition that you just give. You give them the power to receive it, the power of reception to work with it themselves and pose critical questions and go from there. And ancient Latin literature or ancient Greek literature is in that sense no other. And it is a strand that goes whether through the classical canons or through the biblical canons towards Western Europe, towards Eastern Europe, Central Europe. It is a vein that also connects us to old Byzantium to Turkey, which the movie addresses Turkish immigrants. So like how Europe positions itself towards Turkey, historical speaking. There is a lot that it can be raised there that is just not engaged with, whether in history, whether even in Latin or Greek, whether in courses on social skills or more modern day issues. So there's a lot of potential there to engage with, whether it's very specific in my field or whether it's on the domain of politics, social skills, and those kind of courses.
Yes, and I think there's a lot of very, it's interesting to see those common roots that we have as society. And of course, we shouldn't just look at things from a European perspective, but also more globally and Europe's role within that as well. I think it's important to say. So before I come to the final question that I'm going to ask you all, we've just had a question come in. And anyone who feels like they would like to jump into this, I might come to our teachers on this because it's a very specific question, but also if anyone else would like to come in, please do. And this is from Kirsty Smith, who says that as a teacher, I talk to children about the curriculum in order to help them pass tests, but want them to think about the bigger issues of society. What techniques are there to tackle the big questions? So, well, my first piece of advice is watch this movie to see what Brigitte does, because Brigitte does it really, really well, and uses, I believe they call it the Socratic method, don't they, of questioning and having dialogue to see these issues. But I wonder, Dalibor, if I could ask you if you might have any immediate responses to how do you tackle these bigger questions through your teaching, and do you have any advice to offer, Kirsty?
Oh, thanks. Actually, I might just have a start, because at the moment I'm part of this project that deals with critical pedagogy, and it tries to find out whether it's possible to apply these principles of critical pedagogy to primary school students. And like the first principle is we always try to start with is, of course, we have to follow the curriculum, we have to follow the plan, but we can tackle almost any issue but asking the students themselves first. What is your personal experience with this? How is this relevant to your own life? And very often students bring these topics that are at the same time part of the curriculum, are perfectly fine part of the teaching plan that we've created, but it actually makes the whole point relevant to the kids and brings in the big picture. So it's not always about the facts that we've prepared for them, but about the experience that they bring in, and we can use as a starting point to maybe explain part of these facts we wanted to mention anyway. So starting with the kids' experience for me is the most inclusive way, and also the most efficient way to start tackling the big picture and not just the curriculum as a text.
That's some fantastic ideas there. Thank you very much. And I wonder, Anya, sorry to put you on the spot, but I just wonder, from your perspective as a recent student, if you've ever had experiences of talking about these big questions in society. And I know that obviously you are a green activist who has been campaigning around issues such as climate change. How do you think that teachers and the education system could address these issues, and what techniques do you think that a teacher like Kirsty could use?
Yeah, so I often think that many students, especially the older students, maybe coming like from the 7th grade and older, are experiencing that when we're trying to touch up some bigger questions, such as climate change, such as environmental issues, the teachers often offer really standardized answers, and also the students may feel like they're pressured to feel or pressured to like write some kind of like really biased opinions and stuff. And as I wouldn't say that we need some kind of anti-climate campaigning to teachers, but I'm saying that maybe adding more kind of a debate structured activities to students and also to the classrooms might be really good, and also just giving students different kinds of opinions and also giving them different kinds of examples how you can tackle some really specific problems. So when you're just giving a small student a big issue like climate change, you might get them really easily to the point where they feel super useless and they feel really helpless. So maybe going through the really specific and really local kind of ways to be active in some things. Yeah, so maybe overall just be as specific and as local as you can. Thank you.
I think that's a really great point as well, looking at the things that are actually happening around the school and how they can connect to that as well. Well, unfortunately, we have actually run out of time for today's session, but thank you so much to everybody who's been sending in comments in the chat. I'll just very quickly read some of the comments that we've had. So Albert Arnaus Verdiger has commented that education needs to have more ambitious goals socially. I think quite a lot of the panel might agree to that. Judith Serra says the film's very interesting. Marta says that Children of Chance is a very inspiring movie, and Brigitte is top. And then there's also some other comments as well that are in the chat, just talking about our artistic pill. So how I think it's Anna Rebus has a comment on Pablo Ponce, saying that Pablo Ponce with the kids in Rollerkite, very necessary project as well. So thank you very much for all those comments in. So I just want to thank all of our panelists. I want to thank Anya, Dalaba, Elias, Merica and Sebastian for participating in our discussion tonight. You've all been fantastic, offering such a variety of perspectives. Definitely look up each of our speakers' profiles and see what kinds of activities they've been going up to. I'd definitely recommend looking at some of the research Marika has been doing in the ESRI, some absolutely fantastic research that is so crucial. And let's hope that there's some more funding for that particularly needed empirical research as well. So thank you very much to our panelists. A big thank you to everybody behind the scenes who you can't see, who made tonight happen with the magical tech. They could do incredible things that we can't possibly comprehend with technology. So thank you to the technical team. Thank you to the team at the European Greens as well. So today, the conversation, I must say, is only starting. This was only a snapshot of the things that we can discuss as we continue to recover across Europe. And education is going to be shaped in different ways as a result of the pandemic. So please remember, you can still watch our film, Children of Chance, this evening. So grab the popcorn. I've even got my own special European Greens popcorn box and some popcorn to put in to watch afterwards. And I'm going to watch the movie again because it was so good. And don't forget, you can share your thoughts with us via European Green Party on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram, all of the socials there. And we're going to be back next month exploring the topic of building back essential sectors and empowering workers. And we are going to announce the movie, it's very special, on social media on the 1st of October. So make sure you follow the social media accounts, maybe set some alerts so you can capture that moment the movie is announced. So thank you once again to our panel and the team who pulled things together behind the scenes. And we'll see you next time. And make sure you stay safe and healthy. Goodbye.